Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm Josh with Northern Frogger, and in this video I'm going to be doing some vivarium maintenance. I'm going to be working on the 75-gallon aquarium that houses my Ranidamea variabilis today. Now this tank is a little bit unusual because it's not your typical vivarium setup with the drainage layer and substrate and everything like that. It just kind of started as a plant propagation tank, so it doesn't have a real substrate. It's just a bunch of plants that were in like net cups or little pots, just kind of spread throughout there. But eventually the plants kind of took over and filled up the whole tank. I ended up throwing my Variabilis in there and they've been pretty happy in there. But today I kind of want to go through and reset it just because it's really getting taken over by the plants. Really hard to see in there right now. And the Variabilis are one of my favorite frogs and I hardly get to see them just because the tank is so overgrown. So yeah, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to go show you the tank and talk a little bit about what I want to do today. And then I'll start pulling everything out of there and trying to catch all the frogs out of there so they can't escape while I'm working in there. So let's get into it. Alright, so this is the tank, and as you can see, it's ridiculously overgrown right now. Can't really see into there at all. It'd be a bit better if I wiped the glass down. There is some algae on the glass, which is why it's a bit tough to see in there, but there's still just so many plants growing up the front that you can barely see in there at all. So just to give you a view of the inside right now, see there's a bunch of Broms in the back there, bunch more over here. That's actually one of the problems, is that the other plants are kind of starting to take over the Broms, but I'd like to pull them out, separate all the pups, because a lot of them have pupped out here, and get those ones into their own cups. And I'm going to see if we can get any tadpoles out of these Broms. I'm going to kind of flush them, and we'll try to catch any juveniles that I find in here. But this one is to the point now, I think the best thing to do is just kind of completely pull everything out and kind of restart fresh. So I'm just going to put a time lapse on here while I start pulling everything out and catching the frogs. And we'll check in again in a bit. So in a situation like this where I'm just doing a complete reset on the tank, I basically just grab my scissors, pick a corner and start cutting plants out piece by piece. I'm also trying to select and save as many good clippings as I can, either for replanting into other tanks or for potting up to sell later. And at this point, I also thought I was going to be putting a lot of the cuttings back in the tank, but once I started separating the Broms out and realized how many I had, I decided I would just keep this tank basically exclusively for Broms. And I'm also keeping an eye out as I go for any of the frogs and thoroughly checking each cutting as I remove it to make sure there are no frogs or clutches of eggs hiding in around the leaves. And as I find them, I catch them and move them into a temporary enclosure so I don't have to worry about them escaping while I'm working in there. So far I found 3 tadpoles. I caught one frog out of here, which I kind of thought was the male, but I just found one more. But this one happens to be carrying a tadpole right now. Alright, excuse the mess on the table here. I just thought I would show you guys how I actually kind of try and get tadpoles out of these Broms. So this is a cluster of 3 Broms that I just pulled out of that tank. And I have to be careful here because I think one of the adults is actually hiding down in the middle of one of these axles here, so I gotta try and not lose that one. But basically I'll just use this. This is just RO water, not vinegar. But I'll just kind of fill it up a bit and tip it into this container, and most of the tadpoles should just come out. Okay, so a couple tadpoles came out there and a tiny juvenile frog. So I'm going to try to catch him quick. He's going to go in with the adults. So I'm not sure if it was just that. No. So the adult is still in there, tucked down in the bottom of one of these Broms. Don't quite know how I'm going to get her out of there. But normally I would just try and fill these up, tip it over, Do that a few times and we'll typically get all the tadpoles out. But yeah, that's basically all I will do to collect tadpoles. Now I'll just net these out of here, put them in their own little grow out cups so I can start raising them myself. Still haven't done a final count, but there's at least 15 tadpoles that I managed to flush out of those broms that are in here. And then looking at this tank, then you can see back in this cup there's one egg. I found that attached to the back wall. So I scraped that off and got it in there. There's a few more eggs attached to these leaves, so I got to try and clean those off. And then there's 2 more eggs sitting on that leaf there. That's why this plant is in there. And then I think the one that was carrying the tadpole has been deposited in one of these cups. So I think it looks like I've got 3 females and 2 males now. Like one of the juveniles that I left in there is pretty much an adult now, so I think I'm just going to keep all these together. And the one really young juvenile I'm going to pull out into my grow tank with my other little thumbnails. So this is what the tank is looking like now. The broms are all pretty much taken out of here, and it's just a big tangle of kind of roots and leftover plants. So I'm just going to kind of finish cleaning all of this out of here, drain it down, probably put a little bit of fresh moss and stuff down on the bottom, and then I'm going to repot a bunch of the bromeliads that I cut off and basically just put those back in. And finally on the home stretch here, basically all that's left is a giant tangle of roots in there. So once I was confident there were no more frogs hiding, I just removed all of that, and then I was able to siphon out most of the water. I didn't actually want to remove all of the water or the substrate because there is a thriving springtail population in there, and I didn't want to ruin that. So at this point I just added some fresh sphagnum moss, wiped down all the glass, and then I was able to start putting the broms back in. Alright, and here's the completed tank. I knew there were quite a few bromeliads in there, but I never would have guessed there was actually that many once I started separating them out. Some of them I still haven't separated. Like, I think this purple one right there has got like 5 of them still coming out of that pot. There's a few more that still have little ones coming off, so I left those. So this tank is basically just going to be the bromeliad farm right now. I am going to put the Variabilis back in here because I think they'll do just fine in here. They're definitely my boldest thumbnails, so I think they'll be just fine in here and I'll be able to see them quite a bit. I still have a couple tubs of plants, good cuttings that I took out of there. So now I'm going to be spending the next couple hours probably potting those all up. But yeah, got all the glass cleaned up so you can actually see in there now. I kind of ran out of the moss for the bottom. So I've got some more of that on order, so I'll have to fill in the back part there, but there's a little bit of water, but it's not very deep, so I'm not really worried about it. It's actually quite a bit shallower than it was before. So I'm just going to put the frogs back in and hopefully get some footage of them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video, and for the few of you that are still watching, thank you, and I just wanted to give you a little update on what the tank looks like now. As you can probably tell from the beard, a couple months has passed since filming that last video, and quite a bit has changed since then. Shortly after filming that one, I made the decision to move out of my place that I was in, the acreage in the country there, and moved in with my girlfriend in Calgary. So I've moved the frog room with me. I have managed to keep most of my animals, but the new place is quite a bit smaller, so I have had to downsize and change things up a little bit. One of the major changes was that I actually decided not to keep that 75-gallon aquarium that was featured in this video. Instead, I basically transplanted all the contents and the lights from that tank to this 90-gallon aquarium that was previously housing my powder blue Tinctorius. So this is essentially the same tank. Still got the Broms and the Variabilis Southerns in here. I'm still pretty happy with this tank. I'm glad I went with the decision to just mainly keep it as bromeliads because they've really had a chance to kind of spread out and grow in here, and I think it's really looking good now that it's had a couple months to grow out. A lot of these Broms are kind of popping out like crazy now because they've got quite a bit more room, and the Variabilis seem to be loving it in there still. This is one of the few tanks that I couldn't fit in the actual frog room. I will be doing a video with an updated frog room tour soon, but I like having this one kind of out in the main living area to look at because it is a really nice tank. But yeah, I will be doing a video coming up soon that kind of documents the process of moving the frog room, as well as I mentioned, I'll be doing an updated frog room tour of the new room here. So make sure you guys are subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss that. And thanks again for watching, everybody, and until next time, happy frogging.